From the headquarters of the Guild of Champions, this is the Chris Terrell Podcast, and I am your host, Chris Terrell. And welcome to another week of your weight loss quest. How did this last week go for you, champion? What challenges did you overcome? What failures did you experience? But more importantly, what lessons did you get from that failure? Come on now. Don't let the failure happen without getting the reward for your troubles. Go find what it is you needed to learn and go keep your mistakes original. Now, if you're new here, I've lost 125 pounds myself after an entire adulthood of chronic yo-yo dieting, up, down, down again, before I finally got sick and tired of being sick and tired and made some permanent, meaningful, and lasting changes to my actual lifestyle, habits, routines. I made some changes to my social setting, my cultural setting, my environment, and my system of beliefs. And now I'm here each week helping the good people like you get the same results in your life. Look, losing weight didn't transform my life. I transformed my life, and then I lost weight. See, I always had it backwards. I always thought I had to lose the weight first, and then all the things that I thought were amazing about life were going to come on the other side of that. And can I let you in a little secret about what happened to me in my past? I remember one time I went on a shakes diet where the doctor put me on a bunch of tests and scared me and then told me I need to lose weight now, and otherwise I'm going to have all these heart problems and I'm going to be diabetic. I'm not pre-diabetic, but I'm pre-diabetic. That's not how he said it, but that's the message I took away. And I was just thinking, like, I got to do something. And so, so many people in my town were meeting this doctor and, using the New Directions diet. And so I buy my shakes, 800 calories a day, shakes, pudding, and soup. It was not good, unlike what I told myself and unlike what I told everyone else, because I figured if I said it enough times, maybe I believed it. It didn't work. It was just not that great. And it turns out when you only eat 800 calories a day, that's not a lot of food, and you get really, really, really hungry. And yeah, was I losing weight? Sure, I was losing weight. But I wasn't getting better. I wasn't any happier. My happiness level didn't go up. My fulfillment level didn't go up. Now, did my satisfaction in my weight go up? Yeah, totally. Felt better about that. But all the other parts of there, I didn't feel better about. So I want to talk a little bit about that part today. The parts that we hope that get better, but they don't actually happen just because you lost weight. Now, before I do that, I want to invite you to come join my free Facebook group. I go live there every Monday morning. So if you like the podcast, it's a great way to get more weight loss content to keep you motivated and keep your mind focused so that you get to the end of your journey. You can catch a live stream there every Monday morning at 9 a.m. And I leave the live streams up for 30 days. So if you miss it, don't worry. You can watch it at your convenience. And if you'd like to get to that group, you can go to the show notes where I've got a link, or you can navigate to christerrellcoaching.com where I'll have a link to my free Facebook group there on the homepage that you can access. And I'd love to see you in there. We're over 5,000 members strong at the time of recording this. And I know I'm biased, but it's an amazing group. Also, if you have found the podcast to be of value, we are getting close to another threshold of reviews for the podcast. If you have not left a review of the podcast, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts, because that's the one I'd love to see this number get up higher on, I would love it if you could leave a rating and a review of the podcast. Same to those of you on Spotify. Spotify's adding some great features, so many of you that are listening on Spotify, there's actually a feature where you can leave direct feedback, almost kind of like a YouTube comment. And I do read them. So if you've been wanting to send a message to me or let me know like what you would like to see out of an episode, something that resonated with you, or give any sort of feedback, you can use that feature. What did you think about this episode? I just put that question on every podcast episode. And I love hearing your feedback. So if you have any, go ahead and click that. I'd love to get it. So let's talk about this week, though. Or let's talk about emotional eating this week. Because let's be real, this is why we lose weight for many people. Why many people lose weight. It's because I want to feel better. But food was a thing we were using to feel better. So let's just talk this out for a second. You have a life that has all these sources of stress. And all of these sources of stress, let's say one of them, what it was in my life, my job. My job was a massive source of stress. Wasn't the only one, but it was a big one. And so what I would do is leave the source of stress in place. I would not work on how I handle the stress, and I would not work on the job in attempts to reduce the stress from work. I would just leave work alone. And then I would go home and I would cope by eating. I would go home and I would cope by sitting my ass still for the rest of the day because, I'm too tired because, I've just had a hard day. And so what would I do? I would escape that life into a movie, into TV shows, into a video game, and I would enhance the experience with food. I would escape the home life. My house would have stress by going out to eat. And then, of course, maximizing that experience by picking always the most delicious, delightful, and delectable foods that I could get in front of me. And of course, I didn't want any restraints. I wanted to eat until I didn't want to eat anymore. I didn't want to eat until I had enough. I didn't want to eat until I was full. I wanted to eat until I didn't want to eat because I wanted to do what I want. I didn't want to tell myself no. I'd had enough. Here's the thing about emotional eating. There's always a motive. There's always a motive behind emotional eating. It is not being done just 'cause. But here's the tricky thing about the human mind. The motive, you might have long ago forgotten what it is. You might have become blind to it. I was. Or you also just might not even be aware of the connection. I wasn't. I did not understand that it was my job that was creating my weight gain because my job was getting me so stressed and worked up. I needed to do something about it. I needed to cope. And so what did I turn to? My food. I hear people constantly say, food is the only thing I have. So if food is the only thing you have and you have a stressful life, what do you think is going to happen when you take away your food? Hey, it may not be a great coping mechanism, but it is one. And it works. Come on, let's all level with each other. The reason why I emotionally ate is because it worked and it was fun. Why do you emotionally eat? Because it works and it's fun. Now, does it reach a point where it's not fun? Sure. Wasn't ever enough to keep me from coming back. How about you? I'd certainly keep coming back. And I didn't ever work on the motive for my emotional eating on all my previous weight loss journeys. All I was doing was taking aspirin for headaches. That's all my diets were. They were just aspirin. Think about it. If you have a headache and you go to a doctor and you say, I got this chronic headache. It shows up every day. And the doctor be like, take some ibuprofen. Okay, you take some ibuprofen and the headache goes away. But if you ever don't take ibuprofen, the headache comes back. And of course, what usually will probably happen, the headache will start overpowering the ibuprofen. You'll have to start taking more of it because it'll stop losing its effectiveness. Your body will adapt. And then you're going to go back to the doctor and be like, I keep getting this headache every day. Make it stop. And the doctor's like, well, now we'll give you bigger painkillers. Well, eventually those will probably stop working too. Think about it. When you go to the doctor and say, my head hurts, make it stop, you're not saying, I want painkillers for the headache. You're saying, what is causing the headache? Please find that and let's make it go away so I stop getting these headaches. So what was happening with weight? I'm getting overweight and I can't seem to stop. And we're just taking aspirin as a diet. And the moment we stop taking the aspirin, the headache comes back. Because we're not dealing with the root cause. We're not dealing with the reason why it's happening. And in my case, the reason why I wasn't dealing with why it's happening was first, unawareness. Literally what I am telling you now, I did not know. I did not know this. I did not know that I was emotionally eating because of my job. But even once I figured it out, it's because I didn't have something else to do instead. And it's because I didn't think I could change. If I look at my life pre-transformation, my life was built on a foundational bedrock that I am not enough. I am not lovable enough. I am not likable enough. I am not attractive enough. I am not charismatic enough. I am not persuasive enough. I am not kind enough. I am not blank enough. My whole life was built on the premise that I am not enough. And that I now have to be continually and constantly compensating for my not enoughness. My whole life was built on that. And so when I picked a job, I picked jobs through the lens, through the optic of, I'm not enough. This is probably the best I'm going to get. And when I realized my job wasn't any good, I wouldn't try to fix it, because what if I got fired? I'll never find a better job because I'm not blank enough. This was core to my being. And so to change all of these things, like my job, as an example, it required me to look at the underlying base belief. I had to look at the foundation. I had to realize my house was built on a foundation that had some serious cracks in it. It was seriously compromised. I'm wanting to build a skyscraper, but I'm wanting to do it on a foundation that can only handle a single-story building, and even then it was failing. I had to get to that root core and believe that I am enough. If I'm being honest, losing weight for me, many cases, was nothing more than me attempting to show myself that I am enough. I'll lose the weight, then I'll show myself I'm enough. I'll believe it then. And I'd lose the weight and I didn't believe it because it wasn't enough. Somebody else would give me a compliment and accolades. That wouldn't be enough. The reality is other people's opinions of me mattered more to me than my opinion of me. And when I was making decisions, I would spend so much time trying to appease the person in front of me before I sought to find out what is it that would appease me. If I put half as much energy into figuring out what I want as I put into everybody else, I probably would have been a lot happier. But I was by far and away more interested in what strangers, acquaintances, and coworkers thought of me than what I thought of me. And of course, what happened? I was unfulfilled, and I felt like I was living a life that was not authentic to who I wanted to be. And I wasn't happy. And as a result of this, I sought to be happy, because we all seek to be happy. I didn't want to be miserable. So I sought out how to enjoy my reality. Part of it was I found other people that hated their jobs too, and we could sit around and opine about how terrible it is. The other thing I did is I found other people that thought there was nothing wrong with just playing video games until 2 o'clock in the morning. We were grown-ass adults. I found a bunch of other grown-ass adults with responsibilities. All of us are neglecting our families to hang out and play video games late into the night. And we're neglecting our daytime hours because we're compromising all our sleep. I just found other people so it feels socially acceptable to do it. I didn't want to feel bad about doing it, not at all. If I felt bad about doing it, I might stop. I made sure people around me felt fine about food. I knew who I could talk to about food freely and who I shouldn't. And I only talked about food freely to those people that wouldn't make me feel bad about it, because I didn't want to feel bad about what I was doing. Because quite honestly, it was easier to become comfortable for me. It was easier to become comfortable being overweight and not having any self-control around food. It was easier to cope with that and accept that than it was to change my relationships, to open up to the world about my sexuality, to walk away from the religion of my youth, to look at all the beliefs that I was told as a kid that I'm not enough and say, I reject that. It was easier to just be okay with being big than to do all that. It was easier to be okay with being big than to go to my boss and ask for the position that I'd been gunning for. It was easier to be comfortable with being big than to hear the no. To hear him tell me no. and then have to then go, I guess I have to leave. But here's the thing. It wasn't easier. I just convinced myself it would be. Because in my mind, all of these things that I needed to work on, I made the problems insurmountable. I made them huge. I would shine spotlights on my not enoughness. So that way, anytime I would consider maybe changing a job, I would shine a spotlight on, see, you can't do this because of this thing you did 10 years ago. You can't do it because you're not a hard enough worker. You can't do it because this one thing, this one person said. Yeah. Ignore all the other praise that you've had for the last year. Yeah, ignore all that. Remember that one thing? That's your true potential. I would find the 2 or 3 areas where I did terribly and shine a spotlight or get a magnifying glass the size of the Hubble telescope and put it right over it. And then I'd make sure to put black paint over everything that I did that was good, lest it make me realize that I'm being a little ridiculous and hyper-focusing on my mistakes and saying that somehow is the rule. And so what happened? What happened is I got stuck. I found myself unable to deal with this stuff. And because I had been putting off dealing with these problems for so long, they were no longer quick fixes. The reality is some of the problems I had in my relationships, if I had dealt with them in the beginning, it would have been quick fixes. But I didn't. And unfortunately, these things turned into poison. And they killed the relationship. If there were things, if I had done with my job in the very beginning, I would have had an entirely different career trajectory. It would have been a lot easier to deal with. But I didn't. I just took it. I just took things all the time. Until eventually when it came time for me to start standing my ground and speaking up, no one knew how to handle me because I had never done it before. I never stood my ground before. And because I'd never stood my ground before, now here I am at a higher level and I possess a very low level set of skills on handling conflict. You see, I knew how to facilitate conflict in others. I knew how to handle contract negotiations. I knew how to do stuff when it was all business. But because I was so scared anytime I might wander into the realm of human personal connection, quite honestly, I had the emotional maturity of a young 20-year-old that just got started in their career, that was already struggling with themselves. That was the toolkit I had on how to push back, on how to tell a job to stop taking advantage of me. And so what would I do? Now I'm at this higher level and I'm responding in such a way that people are like, are you sure you were supposed to be at this level? Because I just didn't have the skill set. I needed the practice. And I realized it quickly. So I had to shore up that shortcoming real fast. I had to read a bunch of books. I had to start practicing in other parts of my life on how do I enforce a boundary. I didn't know. I was 35 damn years old and didn't know how to enforce a boundary. I didn't know how to draw one. I didn't know how to determine when someone was crossing it. I didn't know how to determine when I should enforce it. I didn't know to what degree of intensity I should enforce it. I didn't know when I should give grace and when I should be a hard nose. I didn't know any of that because I didn't practice. I, for whatever reason, operated for so many years of my life under the false assumption that boundary enforcement is an innate skill like breathing, and I should just somehow know how to do it, and because I don't, therefore I'm flawed. But remember, my life was built on a bedrock that I am not enough. So of course I thought that way, because I'm not enough. That's what I thought. I had to work on that. I had to work on that early. I couldn't lose weight and then decide to believe I was enough, because what would happen is I would lose the weight and then just point to some other thing to say I'm not enough. And then when I got over that, I would just point to some other thing and say I was not enough. It had to start with me believing in me. It had to start with me looking within, looking at myself as I am right now and saying, self, I love you at your worst. I love you at your best. I love you when you're kicking ass, and I love you when you're struggling. You're an always enough for me. You are always enough for me. I don't need any more from you than for you to believe that I'm enough for me. That is so different. What I just told you just now, I just made up on the spot. I just thought, what would I want to say to myself? And I looked at myself and I said it because I got me up on a monitor here. I never would have said that to myself, even in being fake 5 years ago, because I didn't believe it. I didn't believe I was enough. I would have come up with all these things I need to do before I was enough. And I mistakenly would attribute ignorance, me not knowing something, with my self-worth. I used to believe not knowing something meant my self-worth was less. But think about that. Isn't that kind of crazy? Right now, I don't have the foggiest idea how to drive a semi. I know how to drive a stick shift, a 5-speed car, 6-speed car. I could do that. You put me in a semi, I don't have a clue how it works. I don't know how to shift gears. I don't know how to get something that big started. I don't know how to stop it. I don't know the proper way to turn. I would make all sorts of mistakes I got in that vehicle. I just don't possess the knowledge. I've never learned. How silly of me would it be to be like, come on, Terrell. You're not smart. You're clearly not very, everybody should just know how to drive a semi. Look at all these people on the road that drive semis. There's literally tens of thousands of them that you've seen in the last little bit, and they're all smarter than you. You're just not enough because you don't know how to drive a semi. And of course, what would I do? I'd be like, I don't want to drive a semi. Like, I don't care. I would not at all be bothered by the fact I don't know this. But here's where I would be silly. If it's an area I cared about, I would make it personal if I didn't know it. Like, imagine this. Imagine a person comes into my office. I'm like back in my old job, right? I hired here we go. Let's say I hired an operations person. They came from manufacturing doodads and widgets, and they came to work for me as running operations for cleaning. And they got this carpet stain, right? You may not know this, but there's not a single carpet cleaner. You use lots of different chemicals depending on the stain that's on it. I actually used to have testing kits, and we would go test what product will take the stain out. And of course, imagine if this brand new manager, never done this before in his life, comes in and is like, hey, I don't know how to get this carpet stain out. Come on, man. You're such a boneheaded idiot. Why did I even hire you? You are such a gigantic moron. Everybody knows how to do carpets. Why don't you know how to do carpets? Come on. Do you know what? Don't come back to me with that. You should just know how to do this. Man, you're so worthless. I never should have hired you. Imagine what would happen if that was real. If a person walked in and I responded to them that way because they didn't know a piece of knowledge that they've had no reason in their life to ever know. That would be silliness. That person would leave very quickly, I hope, because that would be ridiculous. And yet, I would do it to myself. I would do it to me. I would not know something. And I would just kick the tar out of myself in my head and be like, you should know this. All these other people know it. Yeah, they've been doing this for 10 years longer than you, but what does that have to do with anything? You're a smart person. All smart people would know this stuff. You must not be as smart as you think you are. But again, I built everything on a foundation of I'm not enough. So of course I talk to myself that way. We question all our beliefs except for those we truly believe, and those we never think to question. And it never dawned on me to question the belief that I'm not enough. It never dawned on me to question the source of that belief. It never dawned on me that if I changed that belief and believed that I was enough, that I might believe it. And that if I believed it, I might make some different choices. Now, if you struggle with emotional eating, I want you to know that dieting isn't going to fix it. It's a different thing. Remember, dieting is taking aspirin for a headache. And sometimes, we need to deal with the source of the headache in addition to taking the ibuprofen to manage the symptoms. But sometimes you can't even do that because you need to see if the symptoms are getting better. And so with weight loss, sometimes the answer is not to diet so intensely because you need to see if you're getting better. Dealing with emotional eating is a completely separate initiative that stands apart from dealing with weight loss. Emotional eating is more more focused on dealing with why you gained the weight in the first place. Because what happens is you have stress in your life and you have coping mechanisms in your life that you need to learn how to first identify, and B, how to overcome them. And then C, you need to know what to do instead. And this takes time. Time. It's taken me years. When I work with people one-on-one intensely, it is many, many months just to have one breakthrough. And you're going to have several breakthroughs. And the reason being, we have to wait for life to get stressful and then work through it. You have to come to a stressful moment where you always tap out and then not. You have to come to a moment where you always turn to food and then not. You have to come to a moment where you always jump into a video game or to TikTok scrolling and then not. You have to come to a situation where you always back down and let the other person in front of you take advantage of you and then not do that. You have to act differently. If you keep doing what you've always done, you're going to keep getting what you've always gotten. If you want new results, you have to do new things. But if you're going to do new things, you have to think differently. You can't solve your problems with the same thinking that you used when you created it. As said by a smart guy, Albert Einstein, and he's right. The mindset that I had when I gained the weight could not be the mindset to keep while I lost it, and it could not be the mindset to have after I lost the weight. My mindset of I'm not blank enough needed to go. And if you are someone that struggles with that, constantly feeling the voice of you're not blank enough, always feeling like you're compensating, I want you to know you're not alone. You're not the weird one. You're not the only one that deals with it. I'm willing to bet every single person you know struggles with it now or has in the past. In my career, I've gotten to meet a lot of interesting people. And it was really neat as I moved into weight loss coaching. I got to meet even more interesting people. I have met people that are, by all accounts, financially extremely successful, making a lot of money, running very large businesses. I've had multiple clients like that, and I've had people on the other end of the spectrum as well. Here's the thing I can tell you. I've seen everyone at every income level struggle, present tense, with feeling they're not enough. It's not an indicator of your success. It's an indicator of your fulfillment and enjoyment in life. I would hate for you to achieve your weight loss and feel unfulfilled and to feel unhappy on the other side. That would be a shame, because that's really what you're looking for. I know you also want to be thin, but you're wanting to find enjoyment and satisfaction in life. And you're not going to find it in a diet. You're going to find it by working on yourself, by gaining a deeper understanding of who you are, and by gaining a deeper understanding of why you gained the weight. Why did you overeat? Why did you turn to food? So many times when it had nothing to do with hunger. And don't lie to yourself. Be honest. Yes, I know some of it is because you were just with your buddies and you wanted to hang out. I know some of it is because you were at the movies and you just wanted some popcorn. I know some of it is when you go to this restaurant, that burger and fries and a shake is just your favorite meal. I know that's some of it. But you also need to acknowledge some of the other things. Like when you stay up late at night eating so no one knows. Or when you do like what I would do. When you go do the grocery shopping, you go to the donut section and buy 2 or 3 donuts and eat them before you got home so no one knew. And it was part of a big grocery bill. No one would notice. You know, that those times when you just have been so stressful and you leave and you go get food. Or that stash of candy you keep in the drawer so that every time you get a little stress, you just take just one more little dose, one more little hit. You got to acknowledge if that's your reality. Because if it is, a diet's not going to fix it. You're doing all that for a reason. And I think you're doing it for a reason that makes sense. I think you're doing it for a reason that's logical. I don't judge you for it. I don't blame you for it. In fact, I truly think it makes sense in the moment. And I also think that later you feel differently about it. If you need some help, if you're looking for some guidance and support to overcoming your emotional eating, I would love to invite you to come join the Guild. Because when you join the Guild, you get access to all of my courses. And in there, I have a course called Understanding and Overcoming Emotional Eating. I'm about to drop Module 2 in there, which has several more hours of education to go along with an already powerful set of lessons. And you get access to all of those for just $50 a month. You can cancel at any time. And I would love to have you come in and go through that program and get to a deeper understanding of your emotional eating. Now, some of you, I know listening, you may not be feeling like, hey, I don't really want to join a membership or anything like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my emotional eating course. It's available for purchase on its own. So if you just want to buy the course and have it and go through it on your own, you're welcome to do that. If you want to join the Guild or if you want to purchase the course, just go to theguildofchampions.com. That's theguildofchampions.com. If you scroll down, you'll find the course or you'll find where you can join the membership, and you can go ahead and get access and right away start gaining a deeper understanding of why you emotionally eat and what to do about it. And you can begin to do the work of overcoming it. Overcoming emotional eating is not a quick journey. It's going to take time. You'll probably need some support. Sometimes people can get all the support they need through friends and family. Sometimes you need to augment it with an additional community or support groups. Sometimes you got to go even further and talk to a therapist or a psychologist to get next level support. Do whatever it takes to get the support that you need from wherever you need it. If it's not with me, that's okay. Go somewhere. Get it resolved. If you've not been able to get your emotional eating under control by now and you have been battling it for 5 or 10 years, the time has come. Get help. Because if you could have done it alone, I truly believe you would have done it. I do also believe that you could keep stumbling along for a while, but I don't want you wasting time. There are so many amazing resources out there that can help you, but no one's coming to save you. The person you've been waiting for to guide you to the help is you. You can let my voice be the one that's prompting you to do it, but you get all the credit. You get all the glory. Make yourself a priority. Make yourself a priority. And always remember that you are enough.